This video is brought to you by Summer Associate Hub.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so excited today. We're at the perfect time of year to talk about one of my favorite subjects with a very brand new friend. Her name is Rebecca Petrilli, and we are talking all about burnout. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, tell us a little bit first before we get into my favorite topic. First, tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do for a living, and then I'm going to get into how you can help us.
Okay, great. So I'm Rebecca. I am a Themis Sales Director, but I also work on our marketing team and I am an attorney. I studied for the bar exam using Themis. I was a Themis representative when I was in law school. So really deeply entrenched in both using the product as a customer and then now as a person who works with students who are studying for the bar exam. So I've been doing this for about 6 years. I took the bar back in 2017, and one of my favorite things about this job is, watching people go over that final hurdle, because the bar exam is such a scary and kind of overwhelming thing. And it's really, really rewarding to help people pass the exam.
I know on their way to passing the exam, a lot of people have to do a lot of studying. I found out so much information from doing these podcasts about lawyer brain and, all of these other wild things that I kind of had no clue about. But one thing has been a constant truth that I'm learning from guest to guest and from student to student is avoiding or getting burnout. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. You guys recently, well, a little while ago, did a blog post about burnout, and I want to dig a little deeper into that. First of all, what are the signs of burnout that people might recognize?
Yeah, so in yourself, you might start to see a lack of ability to focus, like really extreme exhaustion, just kind of a sense of apathy around the things that you're doing, and some real frustration about, oh, I have to do this. This feels like such an unbelievable chore that I have to go through, whatever it is right now.
Have you noticed that some of that comes even with a little bit of anxiety attached to it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that probably should have been the first thing I said, honestly. There's a lot of anxiety because you don't want to feel that way. It's not a choice. You're not being lazy. It's, I have all these things that I need to do and I don't have the energy to do it. And that can cause a lot of anxiety. Yeah.
I'm noticing from speaking to a lot of different people on different subjects that one thing also goes hand in hand with the burnout, and that is the inability to focus. What can someone do when they feel that happening? What are some ways to kind of prevent the inability to focus before it gets to complete burnout?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do to kind of take better care of yourself, whatever that might look like for you, to help create balance in your life, to make sure that you're not putting all of your time and energy into one thing and then essentially, right, getting overwhelmed by it, getting tired of it, not being able to manage that particular thing anymore because you've spent so much brain power and time and energy thinking about that thing. So one of my favorite ways to avoid burnout is by saying, okay, I'm feeling a little like this isn't really working for me at this moment. I'm going to step away for just like 30 minutes, even, right? And this is obviously in advance of very serious burnout. This is where you're starting to like creep up to that feeling of discomfort or apathy or anxiety. You can say, okay, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go do something that is truly just for me. For me, a lot of times that's going for a walk or sitting down to read a book. I'm an avid reader. I know that's not everybody's way of calming down, but for me, it really, really works. And then I can give myself that space and that time. And then I'm able to look back at whatever task I was starting to feel unable to focus on with a kind of a fresh set of eyes.
Fresh set of eyes is one of the best things I can say. I know even some people decide to take a nap. I personally cannot take a nap because a nap to me is 4 hours. But to some people, even taking a cat nap, like you said, going for a walk, getting up, exercising, moving around, that does help when you're starting to feel a little bit like, okay, I've been doing this too long. I no longer have the focus for it. I need to switch up and do something else. Do you read books that kind of pertain to whatever topic you're looking at, or do you read something completely way left?
Completely different. I'm talking like pick up a fantasy novel and dive into a completely different world or, something like that, a piece of fiction. And again, that's my personal preference, right? But whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel like you are giving your brain a rest, that's what I recommend you. So if it is reading something relevant to whatever you're doing, by all means, do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm probably a music and tune out the world kind of person, but I love the fact that you said dive into something else because if you're already kind of feeling a little anxious about whatever you're studying, reading
Yeah.
it just for the fun is probably going to be a bit much too. How would you say, like, if someone's already getting to the point where they have not really recognized the early signs of burnout and it's probably headed towards severe, what advice would you tell them or what steps would you give them to kind of combat that?
I think there would be a couple of things that I would personally do in that situation. Once I did get to a point where I'm recognizing, oh, I'm reaching a point that might be really uncomfortable or difficult to come back from, I'm going to sit down and map out what needs to get done, right? Break it down into more manageable pieces and say, okay, that's my task for the day, right? Putting that plan together, that's what I'm doing today. And then I'm going to go rest. Because when you hit that point where you are so exhausted that you are like, wow, this is a problem, at that point, your body, your brain, and your physical body need to rest. And so you have to take like a much longer break at that point. And you have to balance that, of course, with not taking so long of a break that you make it difficult for you to finish or accomplish whatever you were trying to do, but really giving yourself that space and that grace to say, I need to take a second and set yourself up for success moving forward.
You said two of my favorite words that I always say to myself. I give myself space and grace. Because if you don't give yourself the space and you're always trying to keep yourself in this one compartment, then you are going to feel stifled. But you also have to give yourself grace to know, hey, we're not perfect. We're a work in progress and we are working at this. You did mention, not taking too long of a break, that you've gotten a little lax and can't get back into the flow. Would you say setting a timer or, only like one episode of something is a really good thing for someone to do?
I think setting a short timer for when you're in those very, very early stages of burnout, yes. I think sometimes when you're getting into more kind of intermediate to advanced stages where you're feeling really, really overwhelmed, you might need to take the rest of the day off. And that's again, if you have that leeway, right? And I am not encouraging anyone to take the day off if the exam is the next day or something like that. But figuring out, how long can I take off without negatively impacting myself, and then going to that limit. I think giving yourself as much of a break as you can is going to be beneficial. But yes, absolutely, set a timer. Make sure you're really clear on what that boundary is for yourself so that you don't negatively impact your work.
We spoke a lot about burnout within ourselves. Say it's not me, it's my roommate, and I'm noticing something, and they might not be noticing it because they just want to get whatever accomplished. How would you even bring that up to a friend who you think might be headed down that road?
I think you would need to look for signs, right, in the form of maybe like, are they a little snappier than usual? Are they spending really, really long hours kind of holed up in their room or in their study space, not really leaving? Are they not taking care of themselves? Are they not eating proper meals? Those are some signs that I would look for. And then I would try to have a very gentle conversation with them, because I think when you're in that very heightened kind of activated state where you are anxious and overwhelmed and, these words that we keep using over and over again, you're a lot of times not really receptive to what could be taken as criticism. And so I think it's really important to be very, hey, I'm noticing that you haven't really eaten a real meal for the past couple of days. Would you like to go get some dinner? Or something like that to help gently break them out of that cycle, because a lot of times you have to recognize it in yourself before you can actually do anything about it. So all you as the friend can do, I think, is kind of guide them to a space of understanding and recognizing the issue.
I love that it wasn't so accusatory, like, hey, I noticed you haven't eaten. You want to go grab something? That probably would be one of the most gentle ways to pull somebody out of a really big system that they've put themselves in. To just kind of break up that monotony of doing the same thing. I'm just going to study and live off coffee and 5-hour energy drinks because I've got to do all this studying because I've got to be the best. But it's really good for someone to break in and say, hey, you want to go grab a bite? We won't be gone long. That's a good way to do that. And then maybe, while you're talking, kind of talk about, is there anything you need to get off your chest? You want to go for a walk after we get done before you get back in it. And I think that that would be a good way to help somebody else. Now, we've talked all about, moving around, but what are some other ways to kind of prevent or combat a little bit of burnout?
Yeah, I think you mentioned this when we were chatting before the show, but preparedness, right? Making sure that you are doing all of the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success. So that little plan that I mentioned making, if you start seeing yourself in the early stages of burnout, do that 2 months before it happens, right? Have a kind of an understanding of, this is what, let's just say we're talking about a semester, right? This is what my semester looks like. This is what my classes are. If you're in law school, you know when your finals are going to be at the beginning of the semester. That's very clear. It's not a surprise. So you can say, okay, I have to be prepared for these finals on these dates. And then you can work backwards from there and give yourself a really clear plan of, okay, I'm going to have my outline for, say, contracts at least started by X date so that I can really refine it and work it into my finals and my final studying, excuse me. And that way you're never running up to the finish line and you're like, wow, I have 4 outlines I need to create in the next 2 weeks and to memorize all this material for the exams. Not only are you going to get burnt out, you're also not going to do well on those exams.
That's something I think that we really didn't talk about, but we definitely need to get to it. Sometimes burnout, when you're doing so much studying, what you're actually doing is working against yourself. Because you and I know, now that we're at finish lines, you really need good rest, you need to eat, and you need to make sure your body is okay in order to test well. How did you handle that when you were in college?
Yeah, well, when I was in college, I will say I was admittedly not the greatest studier. I was a person pulling a lot of all-nighters, and when I got to law school, I realized quickly that that had to change. That was not going to be a sustainable way of moving through the extremely rigorous and demanding and competitive law school space. In my first, I'll be very vulnerable right now. I did not get the greatest grades my first semester of law school because I came into law school without having that foundation of how do I study well and effectively? And so I had to shift my mindset and say, okay, what do I do here? And then I had to figure out, well, how do I study best? Where did I get the best grades? Which tests in college, which of my law school exams did I actually perform okay on this past semester? And then start to figure out how to implement those study habits into my life moving forward. So it was absolutely a process. And I think one of the other things I'll mention about that is that it's never a process that is set in stone. You're going to self-assess and you're going to shift and you're going to tweak that process as you move through, because different classes are going to require different types of engagement with the material. And you, as you learn and grow as an academic, you're going to find that things that worked for you, 2 years ago might not actually be as effective anymore. So you always have to have that self-awareness and that ability to adjust.
I like that. And you said something that sparked my mind that maybe we might be able to help someone else on. You said during your first semester, which I know during everyone's, a lot of people's 1L year, they go through a little bit of a transition coming from college into law school, different animal. But you said you learned how to study effectively and study well. Can you give us some tips on how you manage that?
Absolutely. I think this is something that I really wish someone would have kind of hammered into my head before I started law school, because it would have saved me a lot of anguish. So for anybody who's in law school right now, like, this is the best advice I can give you. You have to learn what your preferred study methods are. Because sitting and reading an outline or reading your class notes and just trying to, read the information into your brain for the vast majority of students is not that effective. You need to figure out how you can engage with that material to understand it not only at its core, right, at the black letter law, but how does that black letter law apply to this hypothetical? But then how does it apply to that hypothetical? And so there's different ways of kind of shifting the way you're engaging with the material to make it make sense for you. Now, that can look like a lot of different things. I understand that that was a very vague statement, but I think it looks really different for people. So for me personally, I'm a handwriter. Handwriting, pen to paper, really, really makes things stick for me. And that was one of the most effective things I did while studying for the bar exam, actually, especially to learn the nuances of the law. But other students really resonate with making their own flashcards. And that is another form of kind of pen to paper engagement, but it's different than just straight like copying things by rote. And then there's other ways, right? Are you an auditory learner? Are you a visual learner? Are you some combination of all of these things? And how can you engage with the material in a way that doesn't make you feel like it's all kind of terrible? Like, law school is a slog. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy, but it's very much more manageable if you find the study methods that resonate with your brain early on, because the process becomes, again, like I said earlier, studying effectively. You're not pushing yourself to limits. You're not spending 15 hours studying something that you could have done in 6 with more effective study methods.
You hit the nail on the head right there. And I think you just gave one of the best nuggets that I've ever heard. You've got to know how you retain information. I'm with you. I'm more of a, if I write it, oh, I know it. But I'm also a little bit of a visual learner. If I see it, I can do it too. And I know for me how to make those work. Somebody who's an auditory learner would be, how do I make this work? Sing it to yourself, rap it to
Yes.
yourself, make rhymes up about it so that it sticks. And then that way you're cutting, like you said, your study time in half. You got to be prepared for these tests in order to overcome them. Now, I know Themis has a lot of law prep that they can help everybody with, a lot of, bar exam prep. Tell us a little bit about what Themis does, who you are, and what you do to help people cross that finish line to becoming full-fledged lawyers.
Absolutely. So Themis is a bar prep company, which means we have a full course that takes you through every single thing that you need to know to study for and pass the bar exam the first time. And I'll talk a little bit more about our methodology in a moment, but I want to introduce kind of all of our resources first. So our bar review course, that's a paid product, but we have a lot of free resources for you that are designed to help you through every step of the way of law school. So we have what we call our Law School Essentials programs. They are video lectures, outlines, practice questions, and practice essays for all of the first year bar tested courses, and then most of the upper level bar tested courses as well. So those are designed to be used in conjunction with what you're learning in your classes. They can be used as a supplement to your actual day-to-day classwork. They can be used to help you build your outlines, etc., as you're moving into finals. And they can be used for final exam, like a couple days before, refreshers and prep. So there's a lot of different ways that those tools can be utilized. Then we also have an MPRE course. So the MPRE, for anyone who doesn't know, is the Multi-State Professional Responsibility Exam. It's a 60 question multiple choice test that you have to take as part of your process towards becoming an attorney. Almost every jurisdiction requires that you have a valid MPRE score to become barred in that state, not necessarily to sit for the bar. And our course for that, also completely free, comprehensive. So it takes you through a full-blown study plan of everything that you need to know to study for and pass the MPRE. And then, like I said, the bar exam. So all of our products are set up in terms of structure and format like our bar review course. So not only are you getting these really, really valuable resources that you can utilize while you're studying for your exams for the MPRE, you're getting kind of a taste of what the bar review course looks like to make sure that it does resonate with your learning style, that it helps you retain information, that it doesn't feel overwhelming. And so it's kind of a full service like package that'll take you through all of the steps of your law school journey.
So you've got, let me make this clear. You've got free resources that are basically hand holding a little bit to get you through the years.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. They're supplementary to your classes, right? They're not intended to replace anything that you're learning in school, but they contain video lectures, so short, bite-sized chunks of lectures that are, covering the key topics of those subjects, which I found those very helpful when I was in law school because sometimes you have a professor who's just, I had one professor that was so smart that I just couldn't really understand anything he was saying, right? He was way up here
hmm
and
Let's be honest. There is that person. There's always
yeah,
that person, let's be honest, who's a little bit so smart that they can't bring it down to relative levels where everybody can get it.
exactly. And so these bite-sized lectures were a great way for me to kind of review those concepts and make sure that I had an understanding of what was going on in the class. Or if you miss a day, right? Because you're going to miss a day here and there. Make sure that you're caught up. And then the outlines are comprehensive. So they're going to help you not only have kind of a skeletal structure for what the overview of the course is like to help you formulate your own outlines, but it's also going to be really, really helpful in the event that, say, you did miss a day or you zoned out or something. You're going to be able to get that really nuanced information about that part of the law that you were not clear on. And the practice questions, those are really excellent for a couple days before finals to make sure that you really have a handle on what is going on. And then we have what we call key concept sheets. So those are shortened outlines that are going to cover the most common concepts from all of these courses. So it really is like I said, it's a lot of different tools and you can choose how to utilize those tools in ways that make sense for you, but it is a very robust package of resources.
You've got tools for everybody, and it sounds like for every single different learning style. Somebody definitely was working with other people who learn different to put all these packages together. Absolutely. So this is, I would say, one of the best ways the best way to prepare for it. If you've got all of this stuff mapped out for you, it's literally just following the breadcrumbs to passing the bar exam.
Yeah, I would say that's a great way to put it. And to your point about somebody creating the product and working with different learning styles, all of our material is based on best cognitive learning science, right? Best practices in cognitive learning science. And so those shortened video lectures that I mentioned, those are all the way through. That's what you're going to see in our MPRE course. That's what you're going to see in our bar review course. They're designed to work with the optimal human attention span. And for anyone who's in law school who's trying to sit through an hour and a half long lecture, there's a point at which your brain you're not really there anymore. You can try, you can be taking notes that you'll review later, but there's a point at which you stop absorbing and processing the information as effectively. And so our course is set up in a way to help combat that. And not only that, it's flexible in terms of your ability to study so that you can, if you're, say, a non-traditional student or somebody who is working while they're studying for the bar exam or somebody who has a family or whatever your life circumstances might look like, you're not going to be prevented from having a clear-cut path forward through all of this stuff.
You said something earlier when you said, in case you zone out. I know there's a lot of people who can't help it, due to either, just like you said, short attention span or whatever, what have you. The zone out thing does happen, and shorter lectures giving you exactly the information that you need could help so many people. I'm so glad that you all offer this, but tell me, is there something somebody has to do in order to get, hooked up with the services that Themis has?
So you can just create an account on our website at www.themisbar.com and you can sign up for our free resources there. You can also always reach out to info@themisbar.com and they can set you up that way, but it's a really easy and straightforward process.
I would not have known that if you didn't tell me. That was amazing. Listen, if I wanted to go to law school, I know exactly who I'd be coming to make sure that I could pass the first time.
Yeah. Thank you. I found it so, so helpful when I was in law school. Like, this is not, take me being a Themis employee out of the equation. I definitely did better in the classes where I used those supplemental resources than in the ones where I didn't, because you're getting the law explained to you, like I said, by a different professor. You're getting information that maybe your professor even kind of glossed over during the lectures, etc. So it's a really great tool.
And the company's good if you use them while you're in school and then you decide to work for them once you're out and you've passed the bar exam and you cross the finish line. They have to be good then. That's one of the best things ever I think I've ever heard. So is there something, you've already given me the best nugget ever, but is there anything else that you would like our listeners or our viewers to know before we conclude?
I think one of the things that I would just mention for anybody who's currently in law school or considering going to law school is to really focus on that preparation aspect that we talked about earlier in the show and make sure that you are doing everything that you can to set yourself up for success as early as possible, because law school, there are parts of it that are really, really wonderful. And I loved my law school experience, but there are parts of it that are very challenging and can really test the limits of your cognitive capacity, but also your patience and your ability to kind of move through all of these things at once. And so anything that you can do to give yourself that space to say, okay, I've done everything that I can, and so I can take a break today. That's going to save you so much anxiety down the road. And that's something I wish I would have learned a lot sooner.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to tell everyone else. So now they know and they don't have to go through that same journey because you've already given them the roadmap. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a real pleasure. And if anybody has any questions about anything that we chatted about today, please feel free to reach out to us. You can get a hold of me actually through our social media accounts. Those messages will come to me and I'll be able to respond to you directly. You'll find us at Themis Bar on everything.
I love it. Thank you, Rebecca.